Regal Lions. Walk through the royal palaces of medieval England, the temples of ancient Egypt, or the throne rooms of the Mughal Empire, and you'll find the same animals staring back at you from every wall, every crest, every column. Ancient rulers began associating themselves with lions as far back as 3,000 years ago, particularly in the Near East and North Africa, where lions still roamed and were genuinely terrifying. Mesopotamian kings like Ashurbanipal depicted themselves hunting lions to prove they were worthy of the throne. The logic was simple. If you could kill the most dangerous animal alive, you were fit to rule. That association spread fast. By the medieval period, the lion was embedded in European heraldry so deeply that England's royal coat of arms featured 3 golden lions, a design still used today. Richard I of England earned the nickname the Lionheart as a deliberate connection to the animal that defined royal power. English kings kept lions in the Tower of London's Royal Menagerie for over 600 years, from the reign of King John in the early 1300s all the way to the 1830s. The lion was literally a living proof that you were king. What makes this so remarkable is that the lion's royal status wasn't confined to one culture or continent. It emerged independently across civilizations that had no contact with each other, which says something profound about how universally humans read dominance into this animal. Tiger kings. Tipu Sultan, the ruler of the Kingdom of Mysore in southern India during the late 1700s, didn't just adopt the tiger as a royal symbol. He built an entire identity around it so completely that history remembers him simply as the Tiger of Mysore. Tipu's obsession with tigers as a symbol of his royal authority was deliberate and calculated. He believed the tiger embodied the ferocity, independence, and power that a king needed to project, particularly against the expanding British East India Company, which he despised. His throne was shaped like a crouching tiger with a solid gold frame and encrusted gemstones. His soldiers' uniforms were striped to mimic tiger skin. His cannons were cast in the shape of tigers. His personal belongings, from his sword handles to his tent poles, were engraved with tiger motifs. He even commissioned a life-size mechanical automaton of a tiger mauling a British soldier, complete with an organ inside that mimicked the sounds of growling and screaming. That object, called Tipu's tiger, still exists in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London today. Beyond Tipu, the tiger held royal significance across Southeast Asia and among the Chola dynasty of South India, where it appeared on the royal seal for over 1,000 years. The tiger became a royal symbol because it was the apex predator of the Asian subcontinent, and claiming kinship with it was the clearest possible statement of where a ruler stood in the natural order. Sacred falcons. The connection between falcons and royalty is one of the longest unbroken threads in human history, stretching from ancient Egypt to the modern Arabian Peninsula without ever really stopping. In ancient Egypt, the god Horus, the deity of kingship itself, he was depicted as a falcon, or a man with a falcon's head, and every pharaoh was considered a living Horus. The falcon's association with divine kingship came from its behavior. It hunts from above, strikes with precision, and sees what others cannot. To ancient Egyptians, that made it the perfect embodiment of a ruler who governs from a higher plane of existence. Falcons were mummified by the millions and offered as sacred gifts, with archaeologists uncovering entire catacombs packed with falcon mummies near ancient temples. In medieval Europe, falconry became the sport of kings, with strict laws dictating which bird of prey each social rank could own. A king could fly a gerfalcon, an earl got a peregrine, a yeoman was permitted a goshawk. Your falcon literally announced your rank. In the modern Gulf states, this royal connection never faded. Falconry remains a deeply prestigious practice among Arab royalty, with prize falcons selling for over $100,000 and receiving their own passports for international travel. The UAE issues real government passports to falcons, which is arguably the most direct continuation of ancient royal animal symbolism still practiced anywhere on Earth today. White elephants. In the kingdoms of Southeast Asia, particularly in Siam, which is modern-day Thailand, a single animal could determine whether a king's reign was considered blessed or cursed: the white elephant. These animals weren't actually white in the way you might picture. They were pale, pinkish albino, or leucistic elephants, rare enough that finding one was considered a divine sign. The belief held that white elephants carried the souls of deceased kings and were direct gifts from the gods. A king who possessed a white elephant was seen as a righteous ruler favored by heaven, while a king who lost one faced a legitimacy crisis. The animals were housed in palatial enclosures, fed the finest foods, bathed in scented water, and given ranks equivalent to royal officials. They literally held noble titles. Here's where it gets fascinating. Gifting a white elephant to someone you wanted to destroy was considered a subtle and devastating act of sabotage. The animal required enormous resources to maintain properly, and failing to care for a sacred royal elephant appropriately was a religious offense. So an enemy who received one was financially trapped. They had to fund an incredibly expensive animal they couldn't mistreat and couldn't get rid of. That's the origin of the phrase white elephant gift, and the fact that a royal animal symbol became an idiom still used in everyday English today is a testament to how deeply this creature shaped the politics of an entire region. Peacock Throne. The Mughal emperors of India didn't just adopt the peacock as a royal symbol, they built the most expensive object in recorded history around it. Shah Jahan, the same emperor who commissioned the Taj Mahal, ordered the construction of the Peacock Throne in the 1630s at a cost that modern historians estimate between $100 million and $1 billion in today's value, depending on how you calculate the jewels involved. The throne was encrusted with rubies, emeralds, pearls, and diamonds, with two sculpted peacocks standing behind the seat, their tails spread in full display and set with thousands of gemstones. The peacock became a Mughal royal symbol because of what the bird represented in Persian and Indian traditions: paradise, immortality, and divine beauty. Its flesh was also believed not to decay, making it a symbol of incorruptibility, which was an obvious virtue to project onto an emperor claiming divine right to rule. The Peacock Throne was looted by Persian conqueror Nader Shah in 1739 when he sacked Delhi and was never returned. The throne was likely broken apart and its jewels redistributed, meaning one of the greatest objects ever created is now scattered across the world in pieces. The peacock, as a royal symbol, however, outlasted the throne entirely, making it one of the few royal animal symbols to survive from an imperial dynasty directly into a modern democratic republic. If you're finding this fascinating, I upload content like this regularly, and subscribing would help the channel grow. Thanks. Imperial Cranes. If you've ever wondered why the red-crowned crane appears on Japanese yen coins and airline logos, the answer goes back to the imperial court. In Japan, the crane, called tanchu, became inseparable from the emperor and the aristocracy over more than 1,000 years of deliberate cultivation. During the Edo period, cranes were placed under the direct protection of the Tokugawa shogunate, and harming one was punishable by death. Cranes were reserved for the emperor's table at banquets, presented as gifts between royal courts, and featured on imperial family ceremonial garments. The reasoning behind the symbol comes from the crane's extraordinary biology. Red-crowned cranes mate for life, perform elaborate synchronized dances during courtship, and in Japanese tradition are believed to live for 1,000 years, making them a living representation of loyalty, longevity, and nobility. The crane didn't just become a Japanese imperial symbol because it looked beautiful. It became one because its behavior mirrored exactly what Japanese royalty wanted to project: grace, fidelity, and endurance across generations. The story of Sadako Sasaki, a young girl who folded paper cranes while ill after the Hiroshima bombing, I'd have brought the crane symbolism into the modern era in an entirely different context, but the emotional power of that story draws directly from the animal's centuries-long association with Imperial Japan. Few royal animal symbols have managed to remain this culturally central this far into the modern world. Bear Tsars. Long before Russia had Tsars, the bear was already woven into Slavic culture as something between a deity and a force of nature. Ancient Slavic tribes kept bears in religious rituals, believed shamans could transform into them, and avoided speaking the bear's true name directly because doing so was considered dangerously powerful. That spiritual weight carried directly into royal symbolism when the Russian Empire began consolidating power. The bear became the natural emblem of Tsarist strength because of what the animal represented in the Russian landscape. Something that could survive brutal winters, could not be easily conquered, and inspired fear across vast distances without needing to explain itself. Russian Tsars used the bear on regional coats of arms, most notably for the city of Yaroslavl, one of Russia's oldest cities, which has featured a standing bear on its civic seal since the medieval period. The connection between Tsars and bears was reinforced through royal hunting as well. Bear hunting was a prestige activity among Russian nobility, and the ability to kill a bear in close combat with a spear was considered proof of courage worthy of a ruler. Peter the Great was known to participate personally in bear hunts as a demonstration of imperial vigor. The bear became so embedded in the identity of Russian state power that it survives today as the most globally recognized symbol of Russia, long after the Tsars themselves are gone, which is a remarkable testament to how effectively a royal animal symbol can outlive the very dynasty that adopted it. Horse empires. Few animals shaped the rise and identity of royal dynasties more directly than the horse, and few rulers understood that better than the Mongol emperors. Genghis Khan built the largest contiguous land empire in history on horseback, and the horse was central to both Mongol military power and royal identity. Mongol rulers measured their wealth in horses, with royal herds numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The horse wasn't just a tool of war for Mongol royalty. It was a sacred animal whose spirit was believed to carry a fallen warrior into the afterlife, which is why horses were sacrificed and buried alongside deceased Khans. Beyond the Mongols, the horse carried deep royal significance across dozens of civilizations. In ancient Rome, the equestrian order was a class of wealthy citizens just below the Senate, and the word itself comes from equus, meaning horse. Roman emperors commissioned massive equestrian statues of themselves on horseback as the definitive image of imperial authority, a tradition that continued through Napoleon, who famously had himself painted crossing the Alps on a rearing white stallion. In China, the Han Emperor Wu dispatched 2 military expeditions into Central Asia specifically to obtain heavenly horses, a breed he believed had supernatural qualities worthy of an emperor's stable. The horse became a royal symbol not just because it enabled conquest, but because controlling the finest horses demonstrated the kind of wealth, reach, and divine favor that defined legitimate kingship across cultures and centuries. Scottish Swans. In England, there is a law that has technically been in place since the 12th century, giving the crown ownership of all unmarked mute swans on open water, and it remains legally in force today. Every unmarked mute swan on the River Thames and its surrounding tributaries is the property of the British monarch, a status that began under King Henry II as a way of protecting a bird considered a luxury food reserved exclusively for royal banquets. Swans were so prized that private individuals who wanted to keep them had to obtain a royal license and mark their birds with specific beak notches to indicate ownership. Unmarked birds defaulted to the crown automatically. The swan became a symbol of royal grace and purity across medieval Europe precisely because of this kind of exclusivity. If only royalty could eat them, and only royalty could own them, they became defined by royalty in the public imagination. In England, the tradition of swan-upping persists to this day. Every July, a fleet of wooden skiffs rows up the Thames in a 5-day journey, catching, weighing, measuring, and tagging young swans on behalf of the crown and 2 historic livery companies. The marker of the swans, a royal official who still holds that actual job title in the 21st century, leads a census each year. The swan earned its royal status through deliberate legal protection, which makes it one of the few animals on this list where human law, rather than mythology or symbolism, was the direct mechanism that turned a bird into a marker of royal power. Jaguar royalty. In Mesoamerica, the jaguar wasn't just a royal symbol, it was a gateway to the divine, and only the most powerful figures in Aztec and Maya society were permitted to embody it. The jaguar occupied a unique position in Mesoamerican cosmology as the ruler of the underworld and the animal most closely associated with the night sun. The form the sun was believed to take as it traveled through the land of the dead between sunset and sunrise. Because of this, the jaguar was considered a creature that existed between worlds, making it the ideal symbol for kings and priests who claimed to mediate between the living and the divine. Aztec rulers wore jaguar pelts during coronation ceremonies, literally clothing themselves in the animal's power as a formal act of assuming the throne. The jaguar warriors, called Oxalome in Nahuatl, were among the most elite military orders in the Aztec Empire, and entry required capturing or killing at least 4 enemies in combat. Members wore full jaguar suits into battle, complete with the animal's head worn as a helmet, and were granted privileges that ordinary soldiers could never access. But the jaguar pelt wasn't decoration in any of these contexts. It was a ceremonial garment that announced your rank as someone operating at the boundary between the human and the sacred, which is as royal a concept as any crown or throne. The jaguar's transformation from apex predator of the jungle to divine symbol of royal and military authority is one of the most complete examples of an animal being absorbed entirely into the framework of power that human history has produced. If this sparked your curiosity about how deeply animals shape the idea of royal power throughout history, consider subscribing so you don't miss future content like this. Thanks for watching.